Olá! O Fronteiras do Pensamento apresenta a conferência Aventuras no Oceano, do Amazonas à Antártida, com Jean-Michel Cousteau. O oceanógrafo e ambientalista francês conta as experiências que viveu com sua família pelos oceanos e destaca o impacto das ações do homem no planeta. Confira!
There is only one water system, and all of it is connected one way or another. And whether you go skiing in the Andes, you're skiing on the ocean, or you're having a drink of water, you're drinking the ocean. And all of that ends up back into the ocean with everything we put into it. I just come back from my third trip in the Gulf of Mexico, where we're living the most dramatic man-caused environmental disaster, which will go on for decades, affecting hundreds of thousands of people and affecting the marine environment, which we all depend upon, whether we live near the ocean or far away. There's only one water system, and we all depend upon it. So, personally, I've always been very attracted to the roots of the oceans. And thanks to my dad, who came to Brazil and other countries of the Amazon in 1981, 82, and 83, where we spent 20 months in the Amazon, we were amazed by the diversity of plants and animals above water and below water. But in those days, nobody really knew much. Although there were a research center in Manaus, which at the time had only 400,000 people. IMPA was the place where we were getting our scientific information. And today, when I go back, IMPA is still there, and some of the scientists we met in 82, 83 are still there. And Manaus is now 2 million people. It has exploded. It is a real environmental challenge. It is affecting the Rio Negro and the Amazon. Those people are in thirst of finding ways of making a living. 20 million people from Brazil have moved into the Amazon. There were nobody there when we were there in 82, 83, just a few tribes which were protected, very hard to meet. Some of them we did. And today, although there's no real communication systems, and I mean transportation, only the river allows you to go to some of the tributaries and visit a little village with 15 children in a school with one teacher here and there. And today, when we go back there, and we did a few years ago, 4 years ago, there were no days where we were not running into people in the Amazon. There's been an invasion for good reasons, people trying to make a living, trying to feed their families. And then when you look at the Amazon as what I call the roots of the oceans, you find out that the sources of all these rivers are distributed in 9 other countries. And all of those are ending up into 65% of the Amazon, which Brazil controls, and it goes all the way down into the Atlantic Ocean. And at the mouth of the Amazon, you have 200 miles or 300 plus kilometers. And in the middle of it, you have an island, which is as big as the country of Switzerland. I mean, the size, the scale of it is monumental. 20% of all the fresh water coming out of any landmass on the planet comes out of the Amazon. 1/5 of all the fresh water. We need to take care of it. We need to manage it properly so every one of us, anywhere on the planet, can continue to be privileged. It controls, to a great extent, some of the climate, which affects every part of the planet. It is a fascinating place when it comes to science and research. We don't know much. When we were there in 1982, 83, at IMPA, we met some scientists who said, because we were interested in fish, we have identified approximately 2,500 species of fish. When you go back there today, the same people will tell you that they've identified more than 5,000 species of fish, which is more species of fish that we know of in the entire Atlantic Ocean, from the Antarctic to the Arctic. And every day, they find new species, not just of fish, of everything. Insects, plants, medicinal plants, trees, fruit trees. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. A treasure that you have in your country. I felt unbelievably, immensely privileged to spend all that time out there. And the company that I represent, Ocean Future Society, wants to assist, wants to help if our help is wanted. We're not there to dictate, not there to tell people what to do, but we're there to help. And I believe that the impact that we all have on that environment is something we need to look into and be very careful about. And whether it has to do with deforestation, whether it has to do with harvesting any of the species that are there for a reason or another, all of that needs to be done like you deal with a business. It has to be done in a sustainable way. It has to be done like a big corporation will, which is to live off the interests that is produced by the capital. And the minute you go beyond what nature can provide you, then you start to gobble up the capital and you're heading toward bankruptcy. So understanding what is that capital, what is nature that has been made available to us, and how can we manage it in a sustainable way so our children, our grandchildren will be able to have the same privilege that we have had. And as we add another 100 million people to the planet every year, we need to become better and better managers of those resources. And I believe, as we go through what I call the communication revolution, we can do it. Every human being on the planet can be connected to each other today. I have a dream, which is to be in the middle of the Amazon and communicate with other people all over the planet in multiple languages, live 24/7, and being able to answer questions to all those people who know nothing about this unbelievable place. A treasure that is part of your nation, that is part of your continent. Today, as we are focusing enormously on climate change, which has been called global warming, but it is inaccurate to call it that way. There are places where it's going to get colder and places where it's going to get warmer. So it is climate change. There are skeptics, people who don't believe there is any climate change due to the human presence on the planet. I will say, unfortunately, you're wrong. But those who believe that there are changes taking place, we're not just responsible for those changes. Changes has taken place in the past. It has happened, but it happened over millions of years, not over decades. So where do we come in that picture? We came in that picture when we started not being able to recycle the impact that we have on the planet. Our emission of CO2 can be taken care of to a point, and there's a point where it doesn't work. So our responsibility toward climate change is the acceleration of the process. It's not the fact that it is happening, but it is the fact that we are accelerating the process. And this is happening during our lifetime, and it has an impact on a lot of people and will have an impact in the decades to come on hundreds of millions of people who are going to have to move. They're going to have to go other places. We don't have the infrastructure for those people. We're going to have to create it. And coastal people are going to be, if they're on the flats, find themselves underwater unless they move. Because the intensity of the weather is increasing in certain parts of the planet, like the Caribbean, if you like. And if you live on islands or countries, like in the South Pacific and other places, which have no altitude whatsoever, those will be flooded. And there are already in the South Pacific people who are moving away from their country, moving away from the islands on which they live. Because as the ocean rises, because temperature increased the volume of water, and because the intensity or the temperature of these waters are energy that is being outpoured into the weather system, and if you have a storm or if you have a hurricane, that intensity is going up. And thus, it reaches those islands and those people who are in the process of moving. We need to control our emission of CO2 because in addition to the effect that it has on us on land, the acidity of the ocean is increasing at a very, very fast pace. And the consequences are that in places like coral reefs, for example, the ability of the animals to build their skeleton is decreasing, and ultimately the calcium carbonate melts away or will melt away. So there are some monumental issues that need to be addressed. But I believe that now we're becoming more and more aware of what they are, and we can put in place ways of controlling that impact by decreasing the emissions, and it can be done. I've spent a lot of time in Peru because on the west side of the Andes, it is a desert. And because of the Andes, the climate, the way things function, that humidity goes and hits the mountains and doesn't go any further. When you look at the people who live on the west side of the Andes, you find out that they depend on the ice for their fresh water, for their drinking water. And that's why they built dams, which are also providing not only water, but electricity or power, energy. You go to the city of Lima, where you have 9 million people. Those people are completely dependent on the water from the Andes for their drinking water and the electricity, or most of it anyway, from those dams. What's going to happen when there's no more ice? The authorities, the industries, the governments are very much aware of that. And today they are figuring out where we're going to go from there. And we're finding out that they have in mind, and they are already starting to do it, to drill for more oil and more gas in the Amazon basin, because that's where it is. And they've done a market study about water, finding out maybe we can do desalinization from the Pacific Ocean, or maybe it is much less expensive to put another pipeline next to the oil pipeline coming from the Amazon into the West Coast together with the oil and the gas. And today, that's where it's going. It doesn't mean it may not change, but today that is the plan because of economics that would be adopted. Now, we became very concerned because we know how oil and gas is being exploited. And I didn't know that a few years ago, and some of you may be in the business. You need approximately 20 liters of fresh water for every liter of gas or gasoline. And that water is being put back in the environment, in the Amazon, untreated, but it is polluted. If you go to other parts of the world, like for example in the United States, that dirty water has to be treated before it's being released in the environment. Fortunately, and we're very happy to say, there are technologies that are doing that. And we are recommending or suggesting to the authorities in Peru and other countries to use that technology to clean the water before it goes into the environment. We're making some progress, that we have dialogues with decision makers, both in the industries and in governments, whether it is in that part of the world or other parts of the world. Our whole approach is dialogue. It's not so much reaching the head, but it's reaching the heart. Everyone as one, everyone as a family, everyone cares. But how can you protect what you don't understand? Now we do, more and more. And that's why we can make a difference. And as I mentioned earlier, through the revolution of our communication systems, we can talk to each other wherever we are, one way or another, in whatever language. And that's a very, very exciting time to solve some of the issues that we have to deal with today. You know, you can be in the Andes and symbolically, you can drop a leaf and follow that leaf all the way down into the Atlantic. And there are some currents which are taking this very rich in protein waters up into the Caribbean. Caribbean, by definition, is very, very poor, and that's why the water is so clear. And some of these nutrients coming from the Amazon are going right in there. And then some of that water is being captured by the currents that are going north. The Gulf Stream is a current that goes all the way to the northern part of the Atlantic and ultimately hits England, France, Spain, Portugal. So you can follow, literally follow water or anything that is put into the Amazon by nature all the way to Europe. That's how everything is connected. Institutions like this beautiful university is one of the ways of passing on the knowledge to young people, to the ones who tomorrow will be the decision makers, whether it's in industries or governments, and will take much, much better decisions than we have taken because we didn't know. So dialogues, reaching the heart, is the answer. And we need to do that more and more if we want to be able to continue enjoying the quality of life that we have. My father used to tell me, when I went to the Amazon with him in 1983 at the end of our expedition and we were going to come out of the Amazon, we had a host on board. That host was a giant river otter. That river otter had been abandoned, was going to die. It was underweight and lost a canine. And we adopted her. We call her Katja. Katja became part of the family. She lived on board Calypso for 6 or 7 months. But we were leaving. We were not going to take her. We needed to find a home for her because she was so used to humans that somebody probably would have killed her to get the pelt. So we found a scientist who very kindly said that he will take care of her. Katja was part of us. Katja would sometimes, oh, that rascal, jump in our bed in the middle of the night after she went diving to catch a fish, smelling fish and being wet. Sometimes she would jump on the dining table during lunch. But we loved her. And it was very, very difficult for her to, or for us to separated from her. So Dad and I, we were on the Tapajos River. I will remember like if it was yesterday. And we were playing with her in the water. And we knew she was going to leave. Plane came, a little ramp was on the back of the plane, a seaplane. And Katja had to crawl, after we played with her, to crawl that little ramp and go in the plane. And she took off and went to our next destination in a lake where scientists took care of her for many, many years. Dad and I, we were left behind. And we were very sad. And we started walking on the banks of the sand of the Tapajos River. And I will never forget, after maybe, it felt like a long, long time to me, silence. But finally, Dad turned around, looked at me and held me by the shoulders. And straight in the face, he said to me, you know, Jean-Michel, people protect what they love. That was, for me, the resume or the understanding of how we can turn things around for ourselves, for every human being on the planet. It's a big job. We can do it. We will do it. We are doing it. Perhaps tonight, I have the immense privilege of spending this time with all of you. And I'm asking you for another 3 minutes, during which perhaps you can think about what can you do? How can you help? How can we make a difference, every one of us, in our daily life, with our neighbors, with our friends, with our society? I'm taking you in Hawaii. We're there working with a scientist. We had the privilege of diving with some of the most incredible creatures on the planet. Humpback whales. Whales which can sing underwater. Whales that allowed us, as we had our rebreathers, closed circuit systems, so we were not making bubbles, we were not making any noise, to spend 2 hours and 20 minutes with those whales. We could have touched them, we never touched them. I was much closer than I am to you right now. It was a magic moment. And during that magic moment, perhaps you can think about what it is you can do to help, because we can. People protect what they love, remember? Enjoy the Humpback Ballet, the next DVD, please.
acompanhou a conferência Aventuras no Oceano, do Amazonas à Antártida, com Jean-Michel Cousteau. Obrigada pela companhia e até a próxima!